questions and stuff like that, and they would expect me to speak in English, and then I was speaking Vietnamese, and they'll look at me like,
who is you?
like, huh? So it's like, so imagine being like a kid that like grew up in like an American culture where you don't really fit in. Okay. Welcome to yours truly. My name is Tina.
And I'm Mohammed.
This is our podcast from us to you. If you're new, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. This is our second episode, and we love having you here.
Yep, this is the show where nothing is off limits, where we try to have some fun and also learn something new at the same time. So sit back, relax, grab a snack, and join us on our shenanigans.
So we think we should give out a little trigger warning. We're talking about something that's very personal to us, but it can be a little bit triggering depending on like just how you experience whatever we were talking about. So, here's your trigger warning if you're new. This is like the episode most of you guys are. Some of the topics we are discussing can be heavy and are controversial.
Yeah, so our goal is to make this a safe space for everybody, but we want to be responsible with this platform and understand that what we say may affect some people depending on where you stand on your beliefs and your ideals. So we're not professionals. We're not professional researchers or anything like that. We try to express our opinion and our thoughts with as much information as we can personally gain.
Yeah, so while we're being in a place where people can discuss their situations, we advise everyone to be mindful and respectful when joining in what we have to say. The goal is to be mindful and open with what being said. So, with that, enjoy the show. So, we're going to talk about the topic that we're talking about today.
All right, so today's topic is about children of immigrants and what it's like for us.
If you can't tell, we're first gen.
So immigration and Americanizing those immigrants has always been, a raging topic, especially in America. Whether it comes from different president policies or social norms, it's always been something people have been butting heads at. And so we don't want to necessarily talk about immigration itself, but more so what it's like for I think it was the 15% of people that are born from immigrants that live in America right now.
So, first generation children. We just want to talk about pretty much like our experience about why, like how it feels like for us growing up being a first gen, the experiences that we had to go through, the life lessons that we had to learn, and all that fun stuff. And along those ways, you're going to also hear our thoughts. We might pull out some facts here and there that we looked up. But yeah, so that's pretty much the show today. So, wanna go first?
Yeah. So
I think we should start with us explaining like us growing up from like kid to like our adult years and how like the different struggles we had to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the big thing for me is having not much guidance as far as what it's like to live here in America, because our parents, when they came here, they didn't have any guidance either. Right? They come here, and people like to complain about immigrants not being able to conform to American society, but there's no organization that when immigrants come here are like, all right, this is how our finances work, this is how our culture works, this is how this and that works, this is how we do things here. So you just learn from people that are like you. So my mom coming from Egypt, she comes here learning from other Egyptians, and although it's great that other cultures look out for each other, try to help each other out, it also makes you vulnerable. People can prey on you, people can teach you wrong things or take advantage of you. And so for me growing up and living in a household where my parents didn't know everything about living here in America when it comes to education, finances, societal norms, culture, holidays, you name it. Like everything I had to learn myself, and was very confusing. So when you think about elementary school, we'll start there. I didn't know what homework was until the 6th grade.
Wait, what?
I was confused. I didn't get it. I was like, why do they keep handing me these papers? And then I get in trouble when I don't give them back.
What did you do with them? Did you just throw them away?
No, I would just go home and just like play with it. Sometimes I'd even do it, but I wouldn't bring it back because I didn't understand the point. Nobody told me what I was supposed to be doing.
Oh my gosh. What did you think the papers were? Was it just for you just to keep?
I guess, yeah. I come back from school and I just thought it was just like, just something to do.
Okay.
Like I didn't get it. Like the concept didn't occur to me that I was doing bad in school because I wasn't turning in my homework.
Okay.
And so there's things like that, like that you don't think about, but like you're on your own from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I tell you, like I just learned pretty much everything on my own. When I tell you I didn't understand the concept of homework, like I had to get it on my own. And then growing up, of course, you go up through middle school. You know, no one's guiding you about how to get into sports, about how to get into extracurricular activities. I mean, my mom didn't care about, basketball, which I ended up really having a passion for growing up.
He's a baller. A baller. R.I.P. Kobe.
Rip Kobe. And so for someone not only not understand the concept of extracurriculars and sports and the importance of them, but then also not care about it because it's not like it's not something they were raised on.
It's not like ingrained in your head.
Right.
That's like important.
Then, imagine what kind of effect that has on me when I want to go practice. Mom's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
They'll teach you everything at school. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You got to make the team. And then, of course, going up to high school, same thing, extracurriculars, but then no one's teaching you how to register for classes, what classes are important to get into college, what classes you need to graduate from high school in the first place, the types of organizations, clubs, and support systems that are available in American schools that weren't available in countries where my mom came from, for example. No one's teaching me those things. So I'm over here trying to figure out what classes to take, and I'm like, what is this? Like, I can do whatever I want, or like, what do I got to do?
It's funny though. It seems like for you, like, you growing up, your school really didn't give you that much guidance, period.
They were available, but nobody told me they were there. So I had to go find it. I had to go find out the counselor can help me with my classes and figure out my schedule. No one is like, oh yeah, if you don't know what to do, you can go talk to your counselor.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like for me in my school, like growing up, like we always had people like, hey, like if you guys are confused about your schedule, if you guys want blah blah blah, whatever questions with school, like you can talk to your counselor, talk to this teacher, blah blah. Like growing up in my school, maybe because like I grew up more in like a middle class, low income kind of community where like the school that I went to is like we are very diverse. So I feel like we had more of like a community, and like the schools cared a lot about the students, making sure that like they had the guidance that they need to make sure that like they were fully successful in what they needed to do. Well, it's definitely in like high school too. Like in high school, like, we had like teachers telling us like you can be part of this program to help you with college or a lot of stuff. Like still being like a first gen, I really didn't understand like we had to apply for FAFSA or anything like that. I didn't know what that was. Like I understood like the concept of like having to go to school another 4 years or something after high school, but I never really understood the concept of like how important college was in like American culture, I guess you could say. Like we're obviously like American grown, but like I feel like that's different because we kind of have to live like a double life.
Absolutely.
In a way. But so you were saying how like you didn't really have much guidance and like you were really confused with school and all that stuff, right? Did you have to go into like ELL or like something along that line? Because I definitely did. Like
I think it's called ESL.
You guys call it ESL?
I think it's either ESL, ELL, something like that.
We call it ELL. I think it's like for us as English language learners.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, but I know some other schools call it something totally different. But like I remember like so I was born in St. Paul and I went to school in St. Paul. And then I transferred and I lived, somewhere else in the cities in Minneapolis. I'm not letting y'all stalk me. But literally like within like the first day of school, I had to go to like a whole different room. and like they had me do like multiple tests, like
Me
multiple
too.
reading and writing things. I was so confused why they were like having me do these things. Like I remember like specifically like I was like trying to write something. Like I think I was writing the ABCs, and like I remember this kid was like, "What is she doing?" And the teacher was like, "I don't know what she's doing." And I was so confused because I was like, I was a really quiet kid, so I didn't like to talk. I like to this day, I'm a very quiet person. I don't really talk to you. If you're not talking to me, I won't hold a conversation. That's just how it is for me. So then like I was just doing my ABCs, and then like I don't remember what happened next. Suddenly I'm in a whole like ELL, and like I was so confused. Like I had an extra class. I thought everyone was in this class, but I didn't realize that like I was in a special class until like middle school, and people explained to me that like I had something special because I was not learning English the same as other people, and it was like the weirdest thing.
Dude, yeah, I remember being taken to that room and thinking I'm like special. I'm like, yeah, I'm the top dog. Like,
right,
they gotta send me.
For reality, you're like a little mutt.
Right. They're like, we need to send this hooligan to learn English. But I remember being taken to that class for like 2 days, and I got sent back to regular class because I knew English. Like,
really? Wow, fine. Lucky you. I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I stayed there until like maybe like 6th grade. Really? But then like after 6th grade, like, cause like for me, like I don't know if you guys had the same, but for us, like elementary school was from preschool to 6th grade, and middle school was 7th to 9th grade. No, yeah, 7th to 8th grade, and then high school was the rest, right?
Okay.
So middle school was us for like only 3 years or so. Anyways, like in middle school, I wasn't ELL anymore, but I was in like a different thing that wasn't ELL. I don't know what it was called, but pretty much like I had an extra class where like because I had an extra class, I didn't have to learn a language. I didn't have to go to a gym. Like I didn't have to have a gym class. Anything, nothing, nada. Like I didn't have to because I had that extra class, and it was because I sucked at English. But then like when like I was out of it, like my first year in middle school, and I found out that I was in that course because I had a reading and writing disability. I don't remember what it was called, but like I had a reading and writing disability that I didn't even know that I had. And I was so confused why I had it, because I could read and write English pretty well, and all the teachers there in middle school, they're like, why are you in this? Like you are reading at a college level, you're writing at a college level, like you're fine. We don't know why you're in here. And I was like, I literally looked at them and was like, I don't know why I'm in here.
All I know is I don't have to go to gym anymore.
Right, exactly. I don't have to go to gym. I don't have to take a language. Well, it's fine. It's cool.
Yeah, I remember being sent there, and I feel like they just kind of assumed I needed it because of my name, or.
I swear.
But also, I was a very, very quiet kid too. So like, I was basically mute. So like, if somebody asked me a question, maybe I was just too scared to answer, and they thought like I didn't understand what they were saying.
Right, but I feel like everybody that I knew that like would, no offense, they looked different.
Yeah.
I feel like they were all there.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're Asian, I see all my Asian people.
Right.
I see like all my like Latinos, like everybody there. I just didn't know why. I thought we were special. But yeah, we were special. Not a good kind.
Just not a good guy.
Not a good guy.
But even on that like second or third day that I was in it for a very short period of time. Like I remember it hitting me. I look around the room and I'm like, all these kids look nothing like the rest of the kids in my other classes because they look like me, and like they're either like Somali or they're Latino or you know, whatever. And then it hits me and I'm like, these people think I'm stupid. Like, and I remember just feeling like as a kid, I'm like, what the heck?
For me, like I feel like because my classroom that we was in like that extra special class, it was fun because we had like really cool stuff in there. Like we had like extra books, we had like toys and all that stuff. So for me, it was like I'm special. Like I'm so good. I'm so smart. But then obviously like I could tell that like it was because I was different. And then eventually like when I grew up a little older and kind of started to understand like the process, like still in elementary school, I started to be like a little bit embarrassed.
Right.
Right. Like a little embarrassed.
You're understanding why you're in that class.
And you're just kind of like questioning yourself, like, am I really that bad at English? Am I really that bad? Like, do I really know English that much? Like, I'm American born and raised, and like I can't learn English well.
Right.
But then like that's kind of a good like segue to like a different topic that like I feel like growing up we're both bilingual. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously we both speak English, and I speak Vietnamese and he speaks
Spanish. No, I'm just kidding. I speak Arabic. I did take Spanish in high school though. So.
I took French, so oui. Je m'appelle Tina. I said my name is too.
Me gusta.
Anyway, so I feel like in a way, like I'm very fluent in Vietnamese. I'm very fluent. I can translate like no other. I've had people that came from Vietnam straight off the plane ask me when did I come here from Vietnam, and I tell them no, I was born and raised here, and they're like, I'm so surprised you speak Vietnamese very well. But there are times where like I'm trying to think of a word and I don't know it in either languages. Yeah. I remember this one time I was trying to remember the word rice. Rice, rice. I could not remember what it was in Viet. I could not remember what it was in English. My brain was like buffers.
Yeah.
It's like literally buffers.
That happened to me when I was in Spanish class. Like,
yeah.
I couldn't, because I knew the word in Arabic and because I knew it in English, of course, I couldn't think of it in Spanish, or it'd be the opposite. Like, I know in Spanish, but then I forget it in Arabic for some reason.
Right. Did you ever, for me, in French class, right, when I was, like, learning French, it went, like, it translated to different languages. So I was learning French, and then it would translate to Vietnamese, and it would translate to English, and then when I remembered English, it would translate back. Like, it would translate to all my languages that I know for me to understand what it is.
Dude, especially because there's a lot of similarities from Spanish and Arabic.
For French and Vietnamese, too.
Yeah, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I'm pretty sure, like, some of Spanish comes from Arabic, or vice versa.
Isn't Arabic, like, the first, like,
the Arabic's one of the original languages.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised.
But before I hop into the whole like double language thing and double life, we're gonna get into that too. I have one more story I want to tell. It segues into the whole not understanding the homework concept. Because as a kid, I used to love learning or love reading.
Same here.
So I'd always be like, we'd have a chart for how many books you read, and I always be like triple the second place person.
Such a bookworm, yeah.
So like I loved books and like, but I didn't do my homework because I didn't know. So like that's probably why I was good at English, but also I think kind of segues into who I am today, because I don't like the school system, but I love learning and I like reading stuff.
No, I agree. Same here. Me too. I loved reading a lot. Like in my school, like the book thing, right? And like in elementary school, we'd have like a challenge to see who read more books or which class could read the most books, right? And it was like in my class in elementary school, it was me and this one kid. Me and him would low key be like head to head competing with each other to see who read the most books.
Yeah.
Against each other. But like with our class, we were like springing to get like that pizza party. We would always read the most. Like I just loved reading. I would read like chapter books in a day. I'll read like, I remember like in middle school, I loved reading so much where I would read like a 1,000-page book and I would finish it in like 3 hours.
Right.
Like I was such a bookworm. Like it, like my head was always in the books. Like I love learning. Like to this day, like we're the same. We love to learn. We love to learn new things. We love to be challenged, aka why we said it yours truly. But we love to learn and we love to be challenged. We love to just get to know more about what we don't know.
Dude, I remember my mom coming to conferences in elementary school. This was the 5th grade. You know, I was so hyped. I was like, man, I'm killing the book chart. Reading the most books.
Your son is not turning.
She goes into class to teach her without me. I'm sitting outside the room, and I'm like, man, my mom's about to be so happy. Like I killed it. She comes out. She said, just gives me this look, and I'm like, that's you have an Arab mom. You know that look. She just looks at you like.
Take out her slipper.
Right, she pulls out the slipper out of her purse and like she goes, "You're failing." I said, "What do you mean I'm failing? I'm reading the most books." And she's like, "You're not doing any of your homework." I'm like, "My what?"
What is homework? What is this thing that you speak of?
I just didn't get it. But yeah. So back to what we were saying before, about being bilingual. I definitely catch myself hearing the words in my head in the other language. So if I'm speaking English, I might hear the next sentence in Arabic.
Right, exactly. It's like you have like a different person in your head.
Right.
Like you have like 2 people, and you're having 2 people like speak to each other, and it's like your 2 languages that you speak.
Right.
I do the same thing. Like sometimes when I speak in English, like it literally I see subtitles in my head that's like,
yeah.
And I'm just like, what the hell's going on? And then sometimes like in the middle of talking to someone, like if you get me like really heated, like I don't really get mad, but like when I'm really in the moment, I suddenly switch languages without realizing. I did that all the time. I was just like switch languages, and then people be like, "Huh?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry, hold on, wait." I was like, and then we repeat, and they're like, "What did you say?" I said the same thing, but I said it in Vietnamese. I forgot that you're not Vietnamese. I'm sorry.
Dude, I know this is a thing. This is a thing for I think most immigrant children, because like when you speak to an Arab person and they know English, they will say sentences that have English and Arabic
Yep.
throughout the entire conversation.
Yep.
They're speaking both languages.
My Vietlish.
Yeah, Arabic.
It's like sometimes I go in restaurants, right? I'm speaking Vietnamese. For some reason, I don't look completely Viet, okay? Because I'm half, so I'm half Viet, half Cambodian, so I don't look either or. Some people always guess everything but what I am, okay? So when I be sitting there, like in restaurants or at like parties with my parents, right? And people would not think I would speak Vietnamese, so they would be talking to me or they would ask me questions and stuff like that, and they would expect me to speak in English, and then I was speaking Vietnamese, and they'll look at me like,
"Who is you?"
Like, huh? So it's like, so imagine being like a kid that grew up in like an American culture where you don't really fit in,
right.
But then growing up in your own culture, you don't even look like your own culture. Yeah. So then like you're like, who the fuck is that?
And you don't fully fit in there either because like you grew up American.
Exactly.
And then when you go to meet your relatives, they grew up Arabic, Vietnamese.
Right. But then it also goes to the segue of like, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on.
But real quick on that, like, I know for a fact there's this thing for almost everybody in our situation that grew up like us, because like I remember going to parties and like if someone wasn't like fully sober, they'd fully switch. They'd fully. Back in my younger days, and back in my day, I used to. But they would completely switch. They'd be like speaking Spanish entirely. They go from speaking English to speaking entirely to speaking. And it's just a switch like that. But yeah, continue what you were saying.
I honestly, it kind of left my brain. It has something to do with like living a multiple personality, like living
a double life.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the segue of like, let me backtrack a little bit. So, not really being fit in like American culture, but also not really fitting in your own culture. So you're kind of like, who the fuck am I, right? So then, kind of in a way, like you, even if like you don't fit into your own culture yourself, you kind of get lost in this whole like trying to figure out yourself and trying to figure out like who you are as a person. Because growing up, I mean, I know we're both really proud of our culture. We're both really proud of how we grew up. We're both really proud of like our motherland, like our language. We're so proud of our food and all that stuff, right? But growing up, it wasn't like that.
Right.
Like growing up, I was definitely like ashamed of being different or being right, because I feel like
all you want to do is fit in.
Right. But then it's like, imagine not fitting into either culture, so you're just kind of like, I don't know who I am. I don't know like if I should be more Vietnamese, if I should be more American. Like when I hang around, like I used to go to like church school, like Sunday church school, okay? And like I would be around like a bunch of like Vietnamese, like Asian people, and I would just not feel like I fit in. Right. Because I feel like there's like this like level of like American to like fob level that everybody's on, right? Like I feel like if you're not with someone that has the same level of American to fob level to you, it feels weird. Like you're just like, I don't know if I should be more conservative and more cultural with you, if I should be more Americanized and be more like, bro, like what's up? Like I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I just had a thought of where it went.
Mind you, we wrote notes with bullet points and we still are forgetful. So this is just how our podcast is gonna be. But at least you guys know that we're being genuine.
But yeah, bouncing off what you were saying, like me growing up, I kind of saw both. Like through my first half of school, like from first to about 7th grade, I grew up in a mostly like ethnic community. So like different color people, different backgrounds, different languages, all kinds of stuff like that. And then later on, like from 7th grade to finishing high school, it was mostly white Caucasian people. And not only white Caucasian, but mostly white Caucasian and, wealthy. Or well, not even wealthy, but like more well off than...
He grew up in the rich. I grew in the poor and the ghetto.
I did not grow up in the rich. I went to a rich school. I was like, how there's like circles of like what district you can be in, what school you can go to. I was like in the
rich district?
I was in the middle. I didn't fit in either one. I was like in the middle of the two circles of two different schools, and I was like, I'm not going to the ghetto school. I might as well go to the rich school because like a lot of my friends went there.
You're lucky. You had a choice. You know what? Now I went to the straight ghetto school. Well, like I was like ghetto, but like I mean, I guess I could say like I went to like the more of like culturally diverse.
Yeah, and honestly, I wish I did.
Like my
because
high
like
school, I think like the year that I graduated high school, my school was the highest high school of African American graduate students in Minnesota.
wow.
Mhm. So then that's what I'm saying. Like I didn't grow up in like the rich of like being around people that had like money, but I grew up in people. I grew up in a school where like there were people that had money. There were people that didn't have money, and then there were people that like were middle class.
Dude, the thing is, like, when you go to a school that mostly has money, when you see people that look like you, and you're like, thank God. But
But
then
they don't act
they,
like you, or
but
like
like they don't act like you, and then you find out they're also well off, and that they and like they're also kind of like whitewashed. You're like, man, like I don't fit anywhere. I don't have the money to hang out with you, and I don't have the cultural background to hang out with these people, and I'm not American enough to hang out with these people.
Do you know what's so funny though? But if you think about it, like our friends now, we have very much a diverse group of friends.
Definitely.
Like for one, my best friend is a beautiful Mexican woman. Like she's a beautiful Mexican woman, and like she tries to teach me Spanish. And like he's also like one of my best friends, and like he's an Egyptian man. Like I feel like our groups of friends are very diverse, but I feel like it's because we grew up having to like be around people that are diverse, but like they're so similar to us because they kind of have to grow the same way as we did.
And by that you mean at home you act one way,
The
and
other,
outside you
yeah,
in another way.
No,
It's not even like you act bad outside of home. It's like
Like you get to be
you can't.
more of yourself. You feel more like you can be who you are as a person. Where if you're at home, like for me, being an American, being like an Asian American, and like being in a Vietnamese household, and being the oldest for one,
Right.
I was raised to be quiet. I was raised to be delicate, be very kind of just timid and very respectful, right? So kind of like the what like every single like Asian woman that every person that you see, right? So
I think that's
very,
also just like the rest of the world, really. I mean,
yeah,
like my
like,
little sister has to deal with the same stuff.
yeah,
She's kind of raised the same way.
Yeah, exactly. But like that's how I am at home. I'm very quiet. And to this day, like I'm very quiet too. Like in a car ride, I really wouldn't talk because it's just that's how I was raised. Like I was always told in a car, if I'm not spoken to, don't talk. Like I was raised in the realm of what is it called? The generation of be seen but don't speak. You know, so like that's how I was raised. So like at home, I'm very quiet. I'm very timid. I don't really talk back. I don't really talk to my parents because my parents always was be like, "This is a grown like adult stuff.
Yeah.
Like don't be involved. It's not my business." Right.
There's so many like you're kind of like sheltered for so long, even as like a man. Where like in my culture, like you give a little bit more leeway.
A little bit more.
You get more.
Yeah, no, his sister's right there. She's looking at him like, "Boy, what do you mean by a little bit?"
I tell you what. Okay, so you get more leeway as a guy, but like still growing up, there's still things like that's kept from you, that's like sheltered from you, and you're still expected to act a certain way and hold yourself a certain way.
Right.
And not necessarily saying that's a bad thing because every culture is different and beautiful in their own way.
No, for sure.
But when you're here and you see everybody else acts a different way, you're like, I want to act like that. Like all my friends.
Oh my god, that didn't remind me. Like do you ever like talk to your friends, like your American friends, about like an issue that you're having at home, right? Do your friends would be like, just talk to them back?
They don't
you
get
look,
it.
You look at them and you're like, man, do you want me to die? Like, I don't think you understand. If I speak a word, I am gone. Like, I am done for. Like, I will be disgraced of my family, of my cow, of like, you know Mulan? Yeah. You know what Mushu said? I'll be disgraced of all of that. Right? Like, all of it. Like, my cow wouldn't want me. My family wouldn't want me. The air wouldn't want me. I'm done. I'll be in disgrace.
Yeah. They'll just disown you. They're like, yeah, we don't associate with that over there.
Exactly. I feel like growing up, like, you get, like, drilled to your head that, like, if you do something wrong, you're disowned. Like, you're not worthy of being a family. You have this pressure in your heart of, like, I want to be a good kid for my parents because they came here with the purpose of like wanting to live the American dream, of wanting to be something, do better than what they did at wherever they were.
And they had to sacrifice so much to get here.
You want to be that good American, like first generation kid that gets a good job, live your life, buy your parents a home, do everything that like you need to do for them so that they can really, you know, come here for a purpose, come here for a reason,
right,
and give them a reason to be like, my child did this, I raised my kids to did this, or do this. But then in the process, you get lost.
right.
You kind of feel so much pressure of like, if I do one thing wrong, I'm going to disappoint my parents.
Right.
I'm going to disappoint my community. I'm going to not be able to give my parents everything that they need, everything that they deserve because I made a mistake.
Right.
So then you kind of go into this funk of like, okay, then what do I want to do? Do I want to follow my dream and be the person that I want to be, that I see the potential within myself? But then if you do, how do you explain that to your parents that don't understand that, right? That like here, luckily for us, we can, in a way, live our life the way we want to and still be able to make some type of living off of it, right? But like our parents would want us to be like, my parents want to be in the medical field, which is hilarious because my mom does not believe anything a doctor tells her. My mom don't believe. If my doctor told my mom to drink some medicine, she'd be like, nah.
Absolutely not.
Like, no, like it's hilarious. So even if I was a doctor, she wouldn't listen to me. So, anyways, but like yeah, like it's something like that where like you really want to make your parents proud, but at the same time you feel like you're making them proud to lose yourself. But then I also always think that like, do I have that mindset because I live here?
Right.
Like if I lived in Vietnam, would I still have that mindset?
Exactly.
Right? Would I? Because we live in American culture, we have that thought, and we're, as American, you're raised to think about yourself. You're raised to, you know, make a living for yourself, and you have the independence to be who you are. Right. You are your own person. That's what you're always told. You are your own person. But in my culture,
you're the sum of everything else. You're a product of this.
You're part of a community.
Right.
You have to think your actions, your words, everything that you do affects your community.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's kind of like two separate ideas that clashes together that makes you wonder like, okay, then like, who am I? Right. What am I? Like, I respect my culture so much, but I want this independence. I want this thing that I strive for, that I grew up hearing so much. But how do I do that if I have this?
Right.
Right.
And like growing up with this, when your mind's not fully developed, it is like so hard on your mental health because like you don't know why you feel this way. You don't get it.
Yeah. I feel like even as a 22-year-old, I still don't get it.
It's still hard, but like now that we've developed more, you kind of understand the process and why it's happening. But growing up, like, especially if your parents don't speak perfect English, they're not going to be communicating with you the best.
No.
So, like, they're not going to be explaining to you why you have to do this or why things are the way they are. They're just it's kind of expected out of you.
Right.
That's kind of where, like, you get this feeling of, like, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm that, and I don't know why. But also you feel guilty of it because you're like, my parents sacrificed so much just to get here, and
right, and like, how dare I feel this?
Right. Yep. I could be in Egypt living, you know, like what would be compared to a peasant here over there.
Boy.
Right. With the goats. I mean, that sounds so bad. I love goats.
Oh my gosh, a quick segue. Speaking of like not being able to really communicate with your parents, that's another thing about being bilingual, is that you really can't explain to your parents the way that you feel for them to understand.
Right.
Like, as fluent as we are, I feel like
there's a difference between talking to and communicating.
Yeah, I feel like I can definitely talk to my parents, but I can't communicate to my parents in a way that they can understand me. To understand like my thought, like why I feel the way that I do, and like trying to explain to them like why life now is so different than how they grew up. Like, even like if you think about it, like living here in America in the 1990s versus living, or the 1980s, living here now to this generation, it's two totally different worlds. And you're trying to like explain to like someone that grew up in the 90s, telling them how the 2020s work and how the life is so different, how we have more of opportunity, why like people, our generations, are so willing to take a risk and not live a normal life because we want to be able to be happy.
Right.
Like, try to explain that to someone that already lives here is hard enough.
Right.
But try to explain that to an American, like an immigrant, that came here
right.
to live the American life and don't even understand either of that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
none of it. Like it's hard.
And still, like, as hard as it is for us, you still feel bad for your parents because, like, they came from absolutely nothing, most likely, and they got drilled this idea into their head that, like, if you come to America, you know, you can be happy, you can have this, you can have that, and then your kids are gonna be great for the rest of their lives. Like, everything's gonna be perfect when you come to America.
Right.
And so they sacrifice so much and they work so hard, working, you know, odd jobs or working stupid amount of hours just to get by, just to give you an opportunity to have a chance. So it's not even have a chance, it's to have an opportunity to have a chance at having a chance. They do all that just for that. And so, like, you still feel bad for them, so that's why you can't be upset with them most times. But when, like you said, you can't communicate to them about how you feel, how things are different, they can't communicate to you either what their thought process is, why things are different, why things are the way they are. Because, like, not only are they not able to, but communication the way it is here and expected to be here isn't the same as it is, like, or at least where my mom comes from. Like, you're not expected, people, like, in Egypt, you're expected to be direct and just, like, tell people what it is.
Same.
You know, so it's like, there's no, in America, you know, you kind of, you know, sugarcoat things, or you kind of use extra words to soften the blow, or to, like, you know, navigate through things, try to make things, you know, seem nice, and you try to sound as polite as possible. In Egypt, like, hey, do this, do that. That's it. No questions asked, no this, no that.
Yeah, but I also feel like in my culture, like, in a way, like, I don't know if this is just the people that I grew up with, but, like, I always grew up where, like, everyone in my life is, like, mean, but in a joking, loving way. And, like, me being, like, such a sensitive little person, I'm like, why do they hate me? But they don't. Like, they love me. I get that now. But, like, as a kid, I'm like, why do they hate me? It's just how they are. It's just how my culture is.
Definitely.
They, like, are mean in a joking way, but they mean it out of love. I didn't get that when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
Like, at all.
Yeah, and if an Egyptian starts roasting you, they care about you. They love you. Not only that, but Egyptians will joke about things they should not be joking about. But, like, it's kind of our way of coping with things. Like,
yeah, I feel like in our culture, like, when we go through a hard time, we use it in a kind of a humorous way to get through the hard times. Because I feel like that's just, like, the only way that they can really get through. Because, like, in at least my mom, she doesn't believe in mental health. She doesn't believe in mental health. She doesn't believe in anger issues, depression, none of that, right? So for her, like, the way that she thinks it's normal. Where for me, I know it's not.
Right, we're the problem child because, like, as parents, they're like, I grew up normal, I'm fine. Like, what's wrong with you?
I would call out my mom on her anger issues, and she's like, this is the way that I think. I know I'm stubborn. I can't change about it. And I look at her, I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yeah. But, like, you know, you can't argue with your parents. Like, I remember growing up, like, I would, like, hate my mom. Like, I would hate my family in a way because, like, they just did not understand me, and they would not listen to me, and they would just not at least try in my eyes when I was a kid to understand the person that I was trying to be, that I was trying to be happy, that I was trying to make them proud, and they just don't understand. Right?
Not only that, but they expect so much out of you at the same time.
And, like, it, like, filled me with so much anger. But as I grew up, I, like, saw this one quote that was like, as a kid, we see other parents being a certain way, right? And we see that, and, like, I wish my parents were like that. But what we don't see is that, like, our parents would never be perfect.
Right.
We have to understand that our parents will never be perfect, but we have to love our parents for who they are. Because sometimes we don't, like, think about, but, like, they are living their own life. They're their own person. And, like, growing up, I, like, once I saw that quote, I actually kind of made me understand that, you know, my mom is her own person, and my mom has her own feelings.
Sometimes hard to think of them as, like, anything other than your mom.
Exactly.
Like, they're their own person at the end of the day.
Like, now, like, as a 22-year-old, like, when my mom is frustrated, and, like, I'm frustrated with her, I, like, have to simmer myself down because I know how she is, and I know that, like, she's not going to change the way that she is because that's just how she is. Yeah. So I have to, like, simmer down myself sometimes and be like, hey, like, we need to talk about this. Like, this is not okay. Like, being a kid, you would think that, you know, that's not fair. Yeah, sometimes it's not. But I feel like that's the only way that we can understand our parents.
I think that goes for kids, like, overall, because, like, when your parent goes through something, it's hard for you to be like, what do you? It's hard for you to like grasp the idea that like she's also my mom, but she's also this and this and this.
Yeah, she's
like
also like
when your
she's
mom's
also
upset,
like,
you're like, what else could you be mad at? You're my mom. Like that's
right,
what else could you be doing?
yeah,
You're my mom.
yeah.
Like
Sure.
it's hard for that. It's hard for you to think of like, I don't even know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it correctly. Like when you see a teacher outside of school,
Oh my god,
and
I
you're
used
like,
to think my
what?
teachers actually lived in school.
Yeah. When you see a teacher outside of school, you're like, what? You're a real person? You're supposed to be, you're my teacher. You're supposed to be at school. Same thing with your parents. You're like, you're my mom. Like that's it. Like
you're my mother. That's it. That's
you're
all
not. You're not you. You're mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
But yeah, I think what we touched on a little bit is the expectations that come with it, and I mean it goes different for everybody. Everybody has different circumstances, but generally, you're expected to do what's best for the rest of the family, not just what's for you. You're supposed to take consideration
Your
everybody else.
Of your family, of like carrying on a generation after you.
Right.
Like you grow up being raised to think about everybody else pretty much but yourself.
Right.
And like it's so hard. It's so hard. Like being 22, like I really in my 2021, like when I was 2021, I really had to learn how to think about myself, how to think for myself. And it was the hardest thing. Like he was here with me through it all. Like I had such a hard time. Like I would have anxiety attacks. I would break down all the time because I mentally could not think for myself, and I could not fulfill my own happiness because I felt like it was wrong. But that was how I was raised.
Right.
And that's the hard thing, was that like when you grow up and you finally realize that, you know, like I want to live for me, and I want to be happy for me, and I want to be successful in my own way, because I can't be successful living someone else's life.
Right.
That's another thing. Is like your parents sometimes, mostly immigrant parents, they sometimes live their life, their dream life through you. And like even if they don't realize it, it happens. And it's just something that you have to realize yourself. And like that's definitely like for sure what my mom was doing for some time, where she was living her dreams, her life through me, that she regretted, that she wished that she did instead.
Right.
Right? Like my mom always regrets not going to college after high school. My mom came here when she was like 13. But my mom like regrets like not taking school seriously because of the community that she was with. She was always hanging out with like her people, like her like people that were within her race. So then she kind of grew up like, you know, being someone that like got good grades in school but really didn't care. Right? And then she didn't go to college and all that stuff, and she had me at a young age, so she felt like she couldn't. Right? I feel like in my culture, I feel like my mom felt like she had to be a parent and she couldn't be her own person. So she got lost and she wasn't really happy with her life because she couldn't live her life. Right? And it's kind of like in that, like I really had to figure that out on my own for me to really accept my mom for who she is as a person. Because if I didn't, I feel like I still would have like this like anger towards her. Right?
Right.
But then like once realizing that, I just kind of like, okay, I really need to live for myself. I really need to live for myself, and like even if I disappoint my parents, or even if I disappoint my mom, at least I'm doing it out of love for her, of me wanting to be happy for myself so that I can take care of her in the future.
And that's a really hard decision to make.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like a whole foreign concept. Like if you're born here, what I've noticed is that you're born here and your parents are, you know, from here as well. You know, it's a little bit easier to grasp to be like, you know, you can choose whatever degree you want, or you can choose whatever field you want for the most part. I know, you know, I'm not speaking for everybody, but for the most part, you can go out as late as you want, you can hang out with whoever you want, and you can do this as long as you do that. Like, there's some sense of like, you don't have to worry about what your decision does to me if I'm your parent. Whereas it's complete opposite if you're, you know, a first gen. And then on top of all that, you know, if you also have the burden of having to help financially, you know, like for a lot of us, we have to give up on what we're passionate about, whether it's sports or whatever, because we have to work, you know. We can't hang out with friends as much because we have to work like a lot of hours. I was working practically as close to full time as I could, like since I can remember. Even before then, as of having to work for money in some way since the age of 12. And so what all that does to you and helping them with financial documents, legal documents, helping translate, and having the burdens of an adult at the age of 10, right? um, I growing up now, I appreciate it because I feel like I've gotten to mature very quickly.
And I've
I
learned
kind of
a
have
lot
like,
as an adult, and
right,
like you kind of like are like kind of you stepped into the real world in a lot sooner than you would want to,
mm-hmm.
but it has made you a lot smarter.
But everything else isn't so like daunting anymore. Like,
like
nothing really scares me anymore.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. They're like, hey, read this legal document for me. I'm like, cool. I'm like, right. You're scamming me. Nope, this line is wrong.
Right. Help me find insurance. All right, I've been doing that since day one. Help me find a high interest savings account. All right, I've been doing that. Help me invest. Like, things like that aren't so scary anymore. But growing up as a kid, having to deal with all that, like, it causes so much anxiety, so much stress, so much. It can lead to depression, and it's not just what you're expected of. It's that you don't have a way of like getting help.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird to go talk to a therapist, especially if you're in your culture.
Yeah.
And same thing for us, where we don't believe in mental health.
Yep.
It's kind of looked down upon. Like, if you're dealing with depression and you physically can't get up out of bed, you're seen as lazy, or you're seen as like, you know, the problem child. Yeah. And so having to go through all that, it's tough as a kid, especially if you can't find a way out. Because no one, as it should be, no one owes you anything. No one is waiting for you to like pull you out of the mud. No one's there. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to first like accept that you want more, that you want different, and that you're okay with being the disappointment. You're okay with fighting these stigmas in your head that nobody told you, but you just kind of accept it in your head.
Yep.
Like what you were saying about, you know, being able to think about yourself. No one told you, hey, you can't think about yourself.
Yep.
But you just kind of like, that's the kind of atmosphere you felt like you were raised in.
Yep.
And so once you kind of erase that thought and start working on yourself and start believing that, hey, I can go do this and I can still take care of my family, that's when you can start to really grow and have a new appreciation for your parents. Start turning that hate into something that you love, and you'll still get frustrated with them and you'll still like be annoyed.
But I feel like once you really figure that out, the older that you get, you have like this sense of respect towards your parents. Like, you don't, like, obviously like you still see them as your parents, but you respect them as a person,
right,
more than you do as your parents.
Absolutely.
You're kind of just like, you know, like you're a person that's trying to live their life too, and you have a sense of like you're struggling as hard as I am. And like the older you get, you really start to understand that, and like once you get that and once you accept it, things get a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, I say all the time, I'm not going to go into detail, but I say all the time, my mom's the strongest person I've ever known. She's like my role model. Like, the type of stuff she's had to go through to get us here, even this far. I don't know how. Like, honestly, if we switch spots, like, I wouldn't be here. Like, I don't know how she made it this far.
Yeah, his mom is strong.
All right, last point before we go. Something crazy. Something racism. How much racism did you deal with growing up?
Oh my god,
honestly?
So much.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like, oh my god, okay.
Not only for you, but your family too.
I feel like I was too young to really notice my family until I got a lot older and I understood racism. I feel like I never knew what racism was until I actually understood what it was. But for me personally, I feel like I did a lot. For like, I remember like bringing like my food, like my cultural food at school. Yeah. Like, you know, it was my favorite food. I loved it, and like I would hear like, oh, that smells. Like, why are you eating that? Right? And I would just be like, dang, like.
Right.
Or like it would just be like things, and like I don't know, like as a kid I feel like I blocked it off just because I'm just like I don't know what they're talking about, right? But like you feel this sense of like shame in your head, and like, and not to bring up, like we can definitely talk about this another time maybe if somebody wants us to, like with the whole like Asian hate that's going on, right? Like definitely. It's really hard. Like I like physically cried when like everything was happening because I started to really worry about my parents, worry about my grandma, because it's like I feel like that stigma of like hate towards Asian has always been there, but like as an Asian American, we kind of have this way of like suppressing it. We like take it as a joke ourselves, or like we kind of like toss it over our shoulder and forget about it because we live in a community where we don't want to be a burden.
Right.
Right. When the whole Asian hate started to happen, that's when you saw a lot more like Asian American that's like within my age start to speak up of like, you know, what you guys say is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. And it's like, I feel like I've always kind of in a way dealt with it, but my brain like has always just like blocked it off. But I do know that I did experience it.
Right.
And I feel like my parents most likely did too, but I never really like, it never clicked to
Mm-hmm.
me. How about you?
Definitely.
His
Thankfully,
name is Muhammad.
you can guess already. I haven't experienced anything violent either as anyone in my family, which I'm really thankful for, because a lot of people have.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up as an Egyptian Muslim man, my name being Muhammad, my mom wearing a hijab, a scarf over her head because she's proud of her culture and her religion.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you consider that she came here right before 9/11. Seeing her in a hijab, like, it honestly scares me every single day she goes outside the house. Like, what if one person remembers that day? I mean, they always say never forget, right? Okay, that's a whole nother story. But the fact I know those people are out there, it does worry me. I know there's way more people that would help her in that situation than would hurt her. But the fact that there are people out there
that were still willing to
would want to, and growing up, I've seen the looks, I've seen the stares, I've seen the glares, I've seen
those glares, like, like daggers to your heart.
Right, and it's even worse when she doesn't know. Like, she doesn't know that people are looking at her that way. She doesn't know.
Yeah.
It hurts. It's like.
And like in a way, like you want to like defend your parents.
Right.
They don't know. Like they don't understand that. Like you
Bro,
know, like
when I tell you I'm in Kohl's with my mom, and I'm looking at people like waiting to fight someone. Like if someone tries something, I look around like I'm like a dog. Like
sometimes
I'm like
just
a guard
like, I
dog.
wish you dare try. Like I might be a short little Asian woman, but I will whoop your ass.
Exactly. Like don't play with me. And of course, me personally, growing up, my name being Muhammad, I get called a terrorist every other day of the week, whatever. And you take it as like, oh, it's just a joke. If I'm not a terrorist, I shouldn't be upset, right? But then you remember there are people who actually believe it. If you say, oh, Muhammad's a terrorist, someone out there is gonna be like, get him.
You just tell them about the one story about your school with like your backpack that your friend.
Yeah.
I also have a story too that I just thought of.
Yeah. So I remember one time in high school, my friends were messing with me, so they took my backpack. We were at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
I took my backpack, and they just hid it from me. They put it in the hallway somewhere. I could see it from the lunchroom, like it wasn't that big a deal. I just went to grab it after lunch. And so I went to go throw my tray away, but of course the hallway was full of people going back to class. So I had to kind of like wait in line to get back to my backpack. And by the time I get there, there's a whole circle around it of teachers and staff, and they're like guarding everybody off of it. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, can I get my backpack? And they're like, this is yours? I said, yeah. They said, man, we were scared. We opened it, and we saw like Muhammad, and we know, and this is right after the Boston bomber at the marathon, because he had a pressure cooker inside of the backpack. So I think it was the same year, maybe a couple weeks right after that. So they were scared, and they're like, man, you never know what's going on. What could happen? It could be a bomb. I said, right.
Yeah, but then if I swear, if they saw the name John or Johnson or like Carl, no.
They're like, okay, is it okay if I look through it? I said, no, like give me my backpack. I need to go to class. No, I'm just kidding. I was like, yeah, sure. I'm like a little scared kid. And then my sister brought up the point too, when I was taking my behind the wheel with the driving instructor.
Oh, I remember.
He would take every opportunity he could to talk about ISIS, to talk about terrorism, to ask me questions about like extremely personal questions, or like really pervasive questions about Islam or like my culture, and try to like find, like he'd be like, is it true that women are forced to wear hijabs? Is it true that women can't do this, can't do that? And they try to like paint it in a bad light. And he'd paint, like I could tell he's genuinely curious, which is another thing that like you have to try to balance as an immigrant or a child of an immigrant. Like sometimes people are just genuinely curious, but they word it weirdly, and you've heard it bad so many times beforehand that like you're kind of defensive about it. So I'm always okay with like educating people, even if they say bad. But I hope if you're not an immigrant or child of an immigrant that you can understand why I might be defensive if you word it that way. And so yeah, it's just little things like that. Being
the guy at the dealership.
I have too many stories to tell.
He does. Can I tell my story? I have one.
What's your story?
I have a story. I just remembered it. So I remember.
Is it long?
No, not really.
Okay, go ahead.
So in second grade, I transferred school from St. Paul to wherever I live now. And I remember this girl. She was like this popular girl. She was mixed, right? I literally, we were having like, I think it was just like homework time, whatever. And I was just with my dad, she was doing my homework, and then I remember her coming up to me and her like friends that were Caucasian, and they're like, "You should go back to your own country," like straight up. That's when I realized what racism was. In second grade, she's like, "You should go back to your own country," and I looked at her, I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Go back to your own country." Because I was born here. She's like, "Go back to where your mom was from."
Yeah, I get that all the time too.
And then in that moment, that's when I realized what racism was, and I was just like, what?
And sometimes there's a difference between racism and prejudice. I count them all the same because it hurts all the same. I don't care what you label it. If you're treating me differently because of where my family comes from, or because of the way I look, because of the color of my skin, or whatever, I don't care if it's racism, prejudice, oppression. Like, you're treating me differently because of it. Like, and I mean, I'm thankful that nothing violent has happened to me or my family, because it could have been worse. I know people deal with other things that could also be worse. But it still adds on to everything else. Like, it adds on to the feeling of feeling left out. And when you have the feeling of feeling left out, like you were saying before, you already feel separate, so you don't want to be the one that causes trouble. You don't want to be the one that says anything. So when someone says something to me, I'm already feeling like I'm by myself. I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to make a scene or anything. So I'm just like, all right, whatever.
Right.
And so that's kind of the difference between someone with an immigrant and something, for example, the racism and oppression and systemic injustice that someone who is black might face, for example, where it's okay to talk about that and it's okay to stand up for them, where we kind of feel like, not saying we're on equal ground by any means. It's two different complete stories. We're not. Like, I don't mean to say that. I'm just saying, in our aspect of what we deal with, it's harder to talk about because we don't want to make a scene.
And it's not something that's very commonly talked about, and if it is, it's hard to explain it. But yeah. So we kind of hit a lot of main points today, and we talked a lot. And obviously, we have so much more to talk about too. So if you are interested in a lot more of our personal stories, and a lot more of what we've experienced,
I think this is definitely a longer one because it is so personal. It's something that we personally went through.
Yeah, and if you guys do want more like episodes like this where we talk about personal things, let us know. But
we also want to hear your stories too. So tell us what you went through.
Yes, comments.
If you're from different place or whatever,
cultures, religion, whatever. Like if you feel like you've had to grow up differently because of like your class, your race, or your religion, or just your gender, anything like that, we want to know. It's a personal, it's gonna be personal, but we want to reach out and talk to you and start building our community now. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for us today. Thank you for joining us.
We're also gonna have sources and somewhere, probably in the comments or description or something like that.
Yeah, I'll put it somewhere. But that's for now. So good evening.
Good night.
Farewell.
Yours truly.